I kind of want to talk a little bit about alternatives, right? Because we've spoken about how prison is bad, but then what do we do then? I mean, we need to keep dangerous people away. Look, seriously, most prison sentences could be resolved by someone just doing community service or whatever. Non-custodial sentences, we have those already. Fines, there's problems with fines, but for certain things, fines may be appropriate. For community service could work as well. Or, hear me out, instead of trying to punish someone for a crime, if we know that 25% of people are neurodivergent, if we know that 10% have learning disabilities or difficulties, if we know that mental health conditions are higher in the prison population than in everyone else, why don't we get to the source of the problem? Why don't we think, hey, maybe there's a reason that these things are happening. Hey, maybe there's a reason that people that are of lower socioeconomic status are more likely to commit crimes. Maybe we can look at all of the data here and figure out what's going on. Hey, do you know what's going on? This society, when you're poor and you're mentally ill, or you've got untreated neurodivergencies, you're more likely to do things that are, sort of bad for other people, antisocial things. And so instead of punishing people after the fact and saying you did a bad thing and it's your fault and you deserve to be punished for it, maybe, just maybe, we should get to the source of the problem and have investments in mental health care. What's the point of putting people in prison to give them mental health treatment when we can just give them mental health treatment so they don't commit the crime in the first place? What's the point of sending people, to prison so that they can come out and reoffend again, only to go back in and then come out and reoffend again, when we could just give them some money so that they're less likely to be in a worse financial situation and therefore more likely to commit crimes? Instead of, sending gang members to jail for being in gangs that they were in since they were children, why don't we have more programs stopping children from getting into gangs? Why don't we do all of this? And then prison wouldn't really be that necessary. I mean, even now, prison is costing money and not really giving us many results, right?
Yeah.
Let's just talk really briefly about the alternatives to prison. I mean, I've got this mostly from a Guardian article from 2019 because it covered things, I would say pretty well, right? And before we get into that, actually, I just really briefly want to talk about another study I looked at, the effect of prison visits from family members on prisoners' well-being, prison rule breaking, and recidivism, a review of research since 1991. This was published in 2016. And essentially what it found, it looked at all of these, it can't draw any sort of solid conclusions because there is such a disparity in the sort of quality, the methods, and the findings of these studies. But there is a consistently positive trend. There is a consistent report. There's consistently reported positive effects of prisoners receiving visits. Basically, being able to be around your friends and family when you're in prison means that you're less likely to reoffend.
No way.
We think that's generally the trend that seems to be there. Oh, sorry, not necessarily that you're less likely to reoffend. Sorry, but that there's reduced depressive symptoms in women and adolescent prisoners, and there is some evidence of reduction in rule-breaking behaviour. And one high-quality study suggested that visits reduced recidivism and increased survival in the community. Now, knowing this, being around a support system, around family, people that you love, is going to be better for you as a person, make you less likely to break rules and whatnot. Why is our current system just pulling people away from that group and putting them with people who have also committed crimes? Also, better physical health, both in prison and changes in health post-release, are related to higher likelihood of better physical health, both in prison and changes in health post-release, is related to higher likelihood of recidivating. Better mental health, both in prison and changes to mental health post-release, is related to a decrease in the likelihood of recidivating. So, basically, if you've got mental health issues and they get better in prison or immediately following your release from prison, you're less likely to go back to prison, is the point here. So what we can see from these two things, and by the way, this is from a paper from 2020, linked below, does in-prison physical and mental health impact recidivism? What we can see here is that if we maybe have people in an environment where, their mental health is being focused on more and they're able to have more contact with their family and friends, maybe more freedoms, and, kind of attack that prison brain and stop that from happening by, giving people the rights that they would normally have, allowing them to choose what to do, not putting so many sanctions on them, all of these sorts of things. Maybe we might solve all of those individual problems there. Maybe we might see all of these slight trends actually have an effect. So, taking all of that into account, there are other things we can do beyond prison. There there are sort of non-custodial sentences. So having community corrections officers. So basically being on probation. You report to someone who is like your officer, and you're like, hey, what's going on? And they keep an eye on you, make sure that nothing's going bad. That sounds pretty bloody good, right? Especially if that person who is assessing you is able to keep an eye and say, hey, it seems that you're now unmedicated for this thing. Hey, it seems like you're going through financial issues right now. Hey, it seems like your mental health is deteriorating right now. Let's get you into better care, right? There you go. Someone's probably not going to commit a crime then. Drugs, for example. Drug courts have operated in Australia since 1999, have been found to reduce recidivism more effectively than conventional custodial sentences. The key to effective drug courts is the ability to make drug treatment orders calling for the intensive treatment and monitoring of offenders with substance issues. So, for example, if someone's doing drugs, who cares what it is? Maybe it's because they're self-medicating. Maybe it's because they're traumatized. Who cares what it is, right? If someone is addicted to drugs, maybe putting them in prison isn't the best thing to do. Maybe helping them with their addiction would be better. Financial penalty, so fines might be better. Mental health care, it quite explicitly calls out here that just help with mental health issues could help. Yep. Could help that in general. It says victim-centered alternatives to standard prison sentences can provide empowerment for victims of crime. So restorative justice is a system of criminal justice that focuses on rehabilitation of offenders through reconciliation with victims and the community at large. So this can involve victims being able to confront their attackers, seek financial restitution, and also have a say on the programs the offender must undertake. While not suitable for all forms of offending, restorative justice measures have been shown to provide healing outcomes for both the victims and offenders. Look, this is it. There are so many other options.
Because that's like that. To me, that is like that last one you said about introducing offenders to their victims. Mm-hmm. That is a non-manufactured consequence. Mm-hmm. Now it's slightly managed by the state, but it's ultimately introducing, rather than like you do this thing and this is what happens to you, not because that's what happens in the world, but because we say that's what happens. But that only happens if you're caught. Mm-hmm. And so that incentivizes you to just be better at not getting caught next time. Mm-hmm. Instead, this is what happens. This is the effect of your actions. This is the other side of it. This is true, the truth of the world. If you do these things, people get hurt by the things that you did. And if you are an empathetic person, you will care about that. Yeah. Right? Like, and if you are somebody who lacks empathy, that's a slightly more complicated situation. But again, it's not your fault you lack empathy. There's a structural thing going on there. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you deserve to be punished unless you have some weird concept of the world where like God makes 10% of people have lower empathy than everybody else, and God wants you to find them and put them in a box and make them not see anyone and not feed them very well and not let them have sunlight very much. Yeah. That's not it. Yeah. Yeah.
Look, we spoke about this in the bonus episode that we did, where prisoners are put under house arrest rather than being kept in prisons due to the Panny D. Now, I mean, basically, when you look at all of this, the sort of through line I would say that one sees here is that crime is not caused by people just being bad generally, right? That's not the main cause of crime. Mental health issues, neurodivergence, all of these things going unattended, poverty, all of these things really strongly influence crime. And if we all want to make the world a better place, which one would hope we want to make the world a better place, right? Sometimes that means doing what is right, even though it's not easy. And sometimes that means doing something that doesn't feel as good. Mm-hmm. And instead doing something that actually feels quite intuitively wrong. But it's the best thing to do. And in this instance, punishment can feel good. Feeling as though someone is being treated poorly because they treated others poorly can feel really good for some people. Mm-hmm. It can feel great. Now, we have managed to trick ourselves into thinking that because that feels good, because that feels morally right and justified, that it is a morally and ethically good thing to do. It is not. And if we want to make the world a better place, if that genuinely is something we want, we need to set aside this desire to see people punished. We need to set aside all of that sort of stuff and actually just tackle the problems at hand, because that's not what prisons aren't doing. That prisons are not tackling the problems. Prisons are not solving the problems. If anything, prisons are making them worse. We have obscene volumes, like an obscene volume of data on this. Obscene. The only thing that's stopping us is what is an attachment to, attachment to sort of like retribution.
Yeah.
And we need to be big boys and girls and theys and thems and just let that go and make the world a better place. Because, hey, yes, it feels wrong that a cannibal, a horrible murderer, should not go to prison and instead have a sort of like home sentence, supervised or whatever, right? But if that's better for the world, then we kind of have to do it.